All right, we are live, so I'll stop talking about my illegal activities, and we'll move on to episode 264 of Together BHA. The whole gang is here today, guys. Like, what a momentous occasion, and what a shit match to cover with all four of us. But I think, first of all, how is everybody? And then let's dive onto a good topic, and let's give the floor to Craig after we've let everybody know how we are. And he can run us through what the fan festival scenario was like in Chicago, where he hit big.
I did. It was. Well, I mean, Adam, Robin, you guys all good before I go on a monologue? Everything good? Nothing to raise?
Yeah.
So perfect. Look at him. Yeah, so the FanFest thing, for those that aren't too familiar with it, the NBC Peacock guys put on like these sort of fan festivals in different cities. I think they did Nashville before this, they did Miami and Orlando and all those sort of lovely stuff. So essentially it's just this mini festival for football, and they bring everyone together. It's a free event, just you can go and just register and sign up. But there was a lot of people there, especially from a Brighton fan perspective. It was in Chicago for this one. I met a lot of really cool people. So we had some of the guys representing the club. We met them the night before. They did a few giveaways, and it was just nice to bring I think it was like 30, 40 people together, all Brighton fans from different parts of the world. So it was really cool. And then the Saturday was really fun. Didn't get too lucky with the weather, so I think they were kind of holding out. There was a Saturday and a Sunday. Our game was on the Sunday. Saturday was amazing, 30-degree sunshine, 85-degree weather, and then the Sunday it just pissed it down for 3 hours straight. So we got just soaked completely through, but still really fun, still really cool. There was a lot of things going on, like all the FIFA stuff going on, and just a lot of people there that I hadn't met before that were Brighton fans that are in the area. So it was really cool. And then on the Friday night, I got to win a T-shirt as well. So that was very cool as well. So all in all, weather aside, it was actually really fun. If there is one coming up, nearer to your area or whatever, if you want to know more about it, like I think they throw like 3 or 4 a year. So it was really cool. Really nice to meet everyone. So a good start to the podcast. So yeah.
What was the T-shirt? What was the prize?
The prize, here's one I made earlier. So it was this. So it's like a personalized like Chicago jersey essentially. But this wasn't like a Premier League thing. This was like a Brighton thing, right? Where they actually got all of the Brighton players to sign this, and then essentially gave it away. And I was incredibly lucky to be
it's all the Brighton players.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was signed either. I hadn't spotted that bit.
Do you have Adam Webster's one on there?
Maybe.
Here he goes.
No, I'm just interested. I always
3 minutes and 18 seconds.
It was very cool. Yeah. So we'll get on to Webster, but it was very cool. I was very lucky to win that. They gave away 2 other ones as well, like Brighton shirts with player signatures all on it as well. So a couple of the other guys got them as well. I just happened to get the Chicago one, so I'm very, very lucky. So, but it's cool, very cool. Now I really wanted one, but now I got one, and now I can't wear this one. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
I would argue you probably got the coolest one of the lot, really, because there's going to be a lot of people out there over the next 12 months that will be getting Brighton shirts signed by Brighton players. But to get like a custom made like Chicago NBC jersey is very cool. So
it is, yeah. And I think like for me, I always buy the shirt anyway, right? So like I had those, and
you got to get it framed.
Yeah, I probably will, to be honest. Like it's not gonna be any use actually wearing it. So I'll get it framed eventually. It'll be up and around the place. So but yeah, very, very cool. And it was really fun last weekend. So bit weird about the result. I know I wasn't on here last week talking about the Forest Gate, but it was exciting to watch with a bunch of people. So there you go.
I'd love to go back to the halcyon days of a point against Forest, to be honest. that now seems just tremendous. Do we have to talk about this? We have to talk about this Chelsea game, don't we?
Yeah, without further ado, I guess let's get on to it. So Chelsea, flying high, to be fair to them. obviously plowed a lot of money into us, which we probably spent basically all of it this summer. None of it on a quick centre back, which we'll learn to rue over the next hour of this podcast. But we've had a bit of a history with Chelsea. They started with 4 ex-Brighton players for some shape or form: Sanchez, Cucurella, Caicedo, and then of course Colwill, who basically kind of started with us for all intents and purposes in senior career. Brighton, no Van Heck, last minute illness that we did, or injury actually we didn't know about. Veltman also out, and then we also had João Pedro obviously gone as well. And then who else was there? There was one other that we're missing. Adingra. Adingra was out through illness as well.
Yeah, it was the other one.
Yeah. So we had Verbruggen in goal, Estepinian at left back, Kadioglu at right back, Webster and Dunk in the middle, Hinshelwood, Weaver and Baleba in the centre of the park, and then Mitoma, Welbeck and Jorginho up top. Not really sure where Ritter was playing Kadioglu as well. It was pretty fluid and pretty messy that it turned out to be. But when you looked at that lineup and all of the last minute kind of exits that I don't think any of us were expecting to see, especially Veltman and Adingra, what were your thoughts on the lineup? What were your thoughts going into this Chelsea game, given that they're on fire. They're top 4 right now, and they'd won 3 of their last 4 in great form. What were your thoughts when you saw that lineup and going to Stamford Bridge yesterday?
I think everyone was quite shocked about the people left out, because there wasn't much. Obviously not João Pedro, but talking about the late notices, especially Van Hecker. That was the one. As soon as I looked at the team sheet and I saw Adam Webster's name there. And by the way, hold on. How bad does Igor have to be? How bad is Igor in training? Does he just lie down in the middle of the pitch and like do a bit of stretching and then just walk off?
To be fair, he's a big boy. He probably just needs to lay there anyway.
Exactly. I
have a theory on this. I have a theory that Dunk has told Hurzeler that he is actually, even though he's a right-footed centre half, I think Dunk has told Hurzeler he's more comfortable as a left-sided centre back at this point, because he's been basically doing it for 3 years. And I think that he chose to play Webster in his preferred right centre back spot, as opposed to moving Dunk over and playing Igor on the left. That's my theory on it. Like, that's the only thing that I can wrap my head around, because there's been not a single thing of Igor's performances, even under Hurzeler in the cup so far, that has shown any level of incompetence we watched yesterday.
Well, exactly. So that was weird. But I mean, we didn't really have many options apart from the 11 that was put out, because you could argue, outside of bringing Igor in, I wasn't mad at really anything else. It was more just disappointing that some of those players had injuries. That was at least my thinking. I think the only other one you could possibly have a conversation about is Tarek Lamptey ever going to play for this club again? Or is he just, everyone gets injured, maybe he plays? Because Kadioglu, we've all wanted to see him. I think there was some confusion initially as to where Hinshelwood was going to play, right? A lot of people were speculating he was going to play at right back and Kadioglu was going to play further up, or maybe in the centre of the park. Obviously, we saw Hinshelwood play more centrally, and Kadioglu take right back. It turns out Kadioglu's defending maybe not his strong suit. And we saw a difference in the second half when those changes were made. But the lineup was fine. The lineup was not the problem. Thoughts, Robin, Craig?
I mean, yeah, the only worry I had was centre half. Other than that, I thought the lineup was fine. It basically, it's not that, the rest of it's not that far off what you'd probably pick if everybody was fit at the moment. So I was happy with the rest of it, but you just thought, if they're going to play the same way they've played every game, with those 2 centre halves and Weaver holding, then what transpired was probably what that lineup implied was going to happen.
Yeah,
there's nothing on the lineup. No, sorry, Adam. Not that's the best you can put out if Van Hecker, Veltman, and Adingra are not available, right? Like that's that's your next best from a lineup perspective, at least. But yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I didn't really. It's more that I know we've got a system and way of talking about these games, right? We talk about lineups, we talk about what happens. This game is more an emotional annoyance to me, as in, like, all I want to do is moan about the game as opposed to talk about it in a structured, helpful fashion. I don't understand why Hurzeler played the team in the fashion that he did. I know for the first 20 minutes we looked actually half decent, right? And obviously we'll talk about how fortunate and silly the goal is. The perfectly designed goal for a Brighton fan, which is where all of the traitors at Chelsea decided to basically screw up and then we score. But like, I think in that first half, I do not remember a more defensively inept performance from this team, from this club. Maybe someone mentioned to me on Twitter the Villa game, you could argue, but even then, I mean, that's about it.
Yeah, Villa was worse. Yeah, that was honestly the pinnacle of dog shit. Like, I've not seen anything that bad ever, before or since.
I just overall, do you think this game was more our deficiencies or Palmer's excellence, or just a lovely cocktail of both?
Oh, and the referee's ineptitude.
And the referee was horrendous.
Throw that in, yeah. I mean, it's very difficult because you could argue that without the individual errors, I don't know, they could have scored a ton more goals, Chelsea. Like, I don't think the result's going to be hugely different if you take out probably 2 of those 3 factors. Palmer's free kick was obviously excellent. We'll probably come on to the fact that it was taken about 100 yards further forward than the foul was given. But, his other 2 goals were well finished, but you think someone else on the Chelsea team's going to score those. The penalty, someone else will probably score. So Palmer's excellence was the free kick, pretty much. So, no, I think just a general cocktail of complete nonsense from everybody.
Josh, what's the, like, I know Robin just mentioned stats-wise, we got battered from an expected goal standpoint. I think Chelsea's was 4.04 and ours was around 1. And of course they had the penalty that always increases things pretty drastically. But outside of that, stats-wise, it wasn't a completely uneven game. Both teams had 15 shots. We had 60% of the ball. We passed it a hell of a lot more than them. This is away from home against an informed team. But a comedy of errors was sort of the difference in a lot of it.
Yeah, it was. And there's a lot of individual error issues coming to the fore, right? Like, I saw it for someone in a group chat, and Robin's part of the group chat, that mentioned that someone had said on North Stand chat that 8 of our goals that we conceded this season have came from breakaways. Well, we've only conceded 10 all season, so I looked into it, and that's not accurate. But if you look at it, United, yes, it was from a breakaway. Arsenal was from a breakaway as well. One of the Wolves Cup games was a breakaway. The second Forest goal was a breakaway. And 2 of Chelsea's, you could argue, was also part of the high line as well. But when you look at actually the reality of those 10, 3 of our 10 conceded so far, and I watched all 10 of them back last night just to prove this person wrong. That's how petty I was in the mood. But of those 10, 3 of our 10 conceded have came from individual errors from Webster alone. That's 3 of our 10 conceded this season has come from Adam Webster. 2 have came from penalties. Both have been deemed soft by officiating bodies, right? Like Mike Dean and that lot in the Sky Sports studio call them incredibly soft. Talk Sport were calling them soft, right? So it's not just the bias stuff. Like, every kind of pundit is coming around and saying they were soft. That's 50% of our goals already. And then a 6th one comes from an individual error from Lewis Dunk, Arsenal, Saka, of course. And then another one, our 7th, came from Bart Verbruggen yesterday, also an individual error with the errant pass. So when you look at that, we've got 7 goals of our 3 conceded, 7 goals of our 10 conceded, 2 of them from penalties that were soft, and every other one from individual errors from players that should know better. Obviously, Adam Webster hoarding the majority of those. Obviously, this system requires a lot of coaching and discipline, especially a line this high. We've seen it unfold with Ange Ball, right, over the last 2 years of him being in charge at Spurs. We don't have Van der Ven, who can run 108 mile an hour at any given time, right? Or Romero, who's also incredibly quick. So I think we're going to pay for that, really, and we are. And these players simply aren't capable of playing the system that he played. And if he played like this at St. Pauli, I would argue that the players that were capable of breaking on St. Pauli were not good enough to exploit them, right? The same way we saw it against Ipswich and Forest, right? Like they weren't good enough as a team to score goals against us, even when they were allowed to break. Maybe he had that a lot in Bundesliga too. I don't know. But for me, that's the key here is it's individual errors and a healthy dose of shit refereeing, which is more worrying than the highlight itself. But they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think the high line, it puts the defenders under pressure as well, given the fact that basically if you cock up, you're giving away essentially like a 7-on-2. So it's now in their mind going, you've got no real room for error. And we know that our centre halves have got errors in them. So when you throw in the pressurised situation of going, you are the last line of defence, and you've also got a gaping hole behind you that their entire attack can run into if you cock up, it's a recipe for disaster.
I mean, I'm supposed we'll talk about her. So maybe we should go back to the actual like chronology of the game, Josh. So I know we went off piece, my fault, but it started well. Like this didn't look that bad, and especially when we got the first goal, we got into that position which we struggle with in some games when we don't score first, whereby we then have to break down that 10 men behind the ball setup. There was none of that here. We got the first goal. It was chaos, and then things went a little bit awry.
I would, John, and Craig, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I only managed to watch the first 20 or so. I watched both first goals, and then my totally legal television stream cut out, so I wasn't able to watch anymore. So you'll have to walk us through the majority of it. Honestly, I've only seen highlights. But Ruta, the goal, obviously very well taken, no messing about, like very like courageous take. But do you like, given the substitution for Minte against Everton and then the one yesterday, what concussion wise, like what did you make of that? Because he didn't seem right for the entire rest of the time I was watching it, and from what I've heard, he didn't look totally on it for the rest of the game.
It is weird. Yeah, I mean, when you saw him coming off, they were doing all sorts of tests on him, like just making sure that he could find his nose and everything like that, the normal stuff. So it took a while, right? And I think we saw it with Minte as well, is that like if there's any issue whatsoever, then it's a no-go, right? So he must have passed some sort of conducive test to make sure that he was fine.
How will they do that for Cole Palmer if ever he gets one and they ask him to touch his nose? I think he'd get lost.
I don't know. He'd probably still score 3 goals before he gets concussed. Anyway.
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah. It was weird. It did take a while. I think after that goal anyway, we kind of just, I don't know what happened. It turned into a game of we'll just score more than you then, or we'll just go end to end. And I think it was pretty much one of the most frantic halves of football I've ever seen. In that it was just, there was so much energy and just everyone running from end to end, that is like, and then that 8 minutes of stoppage time as well, like everyone was bloody knackered. So I don't know, we said in the group chat, it was like, it's good to get the first goal for once, but then we immediately implode with a just an unforced error, right? Like it's just one of those things, and it just completely knocks you for 6 in. Okay, we've got that first goal, we can now game manage this and we can do what we need to do. And an individual error just immediately gets them back in, and you start panicking. It then becomes this sort of frantic game, which we just couldn't control because the high line or the people playing the high line just aren't capable of doing it against a side like Chelsea. And that's really where I stand, and that's where you just continue to get punished. Unfortunately, the title of the episode as well is that Cole Palmer is a bloody good footballer, and you are going to get punished if you don't play it right.
Robin, it wasn't just like the goals weren't the only story in that, because there was so much other stuff going on whereby we looked incredibly shaky at the back. Like Cole Palmer was through on goal like 15 minutes in, and nearly scored right when he tried to put it to Verbruggen's left, and it just went past the post. And then obviously 4 minutes later, they put a ball over the top. Palmer runs onto it and he slots home. And then 2 minutes after that, frankly, in my opinion, they scored again, and it was deemed offside. I think it was deemed offside because the linesman, by the way, stupid flag rule. I know we talked about this before, but I know he put the flag up on that particular occasion, so they almost sort of had to stick with it. But in my opinion, they were in line. So that goal,
Yeah, it was a goal. I thought
it was a goal.
It was like if we'd have had that goal chalked off, I'd have been furious.
Yeah. I think it was Sancho, wasn't it? Was it Madueke to Sancho?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. To be honest, they had so many like through balls and one-on-ones. It's difficult to keep up with who was involved in which one.
Yeah. So it wasn't. It was just. It felt like every minute there was our back line just got completely exposed.
How about like just food for thought, but like how we've just watched Bruno Fernandes get sent off in the Spurs game, and they're obviously probably about to get pieced apart by Angeball now at Old Trafford. Just how bad is Erik ten Hag in United if Sancho was one of their standout players yesterday and has quite comfortably hit the ground running at Chelsea with their 75,000 wingers and general dumpster fire of a organization.
Well, just how bad is Pep Guardiola if Cole Palmer has left Man City and gone to Chelsea and done so well?
He didn't want him to leave though, did he? That's the difference. He didn't want him to leave, but Cole wanted guaranteed first team football, and he couldn't give him it. So.
Yeah, I mean, Ten Hag's horrendous, isn't he? I mean, he's useless. That's why I think when we played them, we play Chelsea and you play a competent manager. Maresca set the team up in a way to completely undo us. Ten Hag just doesn't seem to actually understand how to expose any other team's weakness, just exposes his own team's weakness. But, I mean, you see good managers are able to bring the best out of players. Southgate couldn't bring the best out of Sancho or Cole Palmer, neither could Ten Hag. And then Sancho and Cole Palmer both Cole Palmer looks arguably like the most informed player in the world right now, under a manager that was managing in the Championship last year. The goal that was scored by Palmer, I guess we got to talk about Adam Webster, don't we?
I mean, yeah. He's integral to basically this entire storyline, right? Like, so we may as well just start and finish with him. Like, it is what it is.
I'm sure everyone's seen this, but for those people that weren't able to watch a completely legal, legitimate stream like you were, Josh, the ball sort of comes back on the right-hand side of the pitch to Kadioglu, I believe, and Kadioglu sensibly plays the ball back to Adam Webster, who is under very minimal pressure. He turns around and barely hits the ball back to Verbruggen and just plays. It was Madueke, who's 15 for Chelsea. Someone number 15 for Chelsea through on goal. It was Jackson, yeah. And Palmer then just slots home. I feel that's not the first time we've seen Adam Webster do that. And there's been a lot of outrage on social media about people going, I can't believe you're having to go at Adam Webster. He's deleted his Twitter account now because you guys are so mean to him. He's come out and made some kind of statement. And let's be honest, in the second half, he did prevent a goal because Nicholas Jackson is such an awful football player. He basically had an open goal and then took 45 minutes to take a shot and Adam Webster blocked it. Great. Well done, Adam Webster.
Let's also just really quickly, be really clear here. Anyone going online to abuse the player on social media needs to get in the bin anyway. Like, obviously, that should be the obvious point here. Just before anyone comes in our YouTube comments going like, so you're justifying it? Obviously not. Like, don't do that. But continue.
Well, it does. Yeah, it depends on how bad the performance is, doesn't it? But no. For my 16 anonymous Twitter accounts I have with just a picture of a random footballer where I abuse Adam Webster. No, there's a very distinct difference between abusing a footballer and then saying their performance was diabolically bad and they've not been a particularly good footballer at this level for quite a long time. And that is Adam Webster. And it is okay to say that. You're allowed to comment on a football player's quality or non-quality because that's what we're all doing. They're put in the shop window. They're paid a lot of money to perform at this level, and he is not doing that. He showed that yesterday. He showed that for quite a while. I think Adam Webster would be a completely serviceable player under a manager like Nuno, Lopetegui, any manager that sits deep, structured setup. Adam Webster is completely fine. He's a very good defender. If you push him up or try and put him under pressure, he falls apart, and he is not good enough for this team.
He's not good enough for the way that we play. It's, I think, the key differentiating factor, right? Is that, like you said, you can put him in a low block, and I think he's a perfectly fine centre back, and I think he has ability. He just isn't able to play the way that we want him to play, or is very exposed in the philosophy that we're trying to implement, and we've seen that for a while now, right? So the De Zerbis, the Potters, and now the Hurzeler, is that in this 2024 game of football, you're asking so much more of the centre backs that maybe you did 5-10 years ago, and that is something that Webster just doesn't have, or needs to have in order for us to turn this ship around, should we say, on this individual, right?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I said a few minutes ago that the style is putting pressure on the centre backs before anything actually happens, and that's a prime, like, that's an example of him just buckling under very minimal pressure, but knowing in the back of his mind the same thing, that given how high we play, I mean, that even, we weren't even pushed that high for that, but as an example, knowing that we're got to adopt this very high line, it just can't handle the pressure of that situation. Like you say, it's nothing against him. I say you put him in a low block, he's absolutely fine, but you've got to be a certain type of defender to be comfortable playing in that role. And one of them is being cool under pressure and having very good decision making. And he has shown in recent times neither of those things.
What's your list of centre back choices right now? Because I know Captain Hindsight or whatever, but let's be honest, we've been quite clear about our thoughts around Adam Webster for months at this point, if not longer. Because for me, if he was fit, I'm playing Van Hecke, Dunk, Igor, and then Veltman centre back all ahead of him.
I would agree with that.
Agreed. I mean, we can see why they wanted to go for Boscagli or another quicker centre half at the end. I mean, I'm going to be even more controversial that if we'd have got Boscagli in, I wouldn't be picking Lewis Dunk right now, because I don't think he's especially enjoying things. You look at him, he just looks constantly pissed off. And he looks constantly pissed off because he's constantly having to sprint to cover massive spaces in defence, which we know is not his game. His game is based on generally reading the ball very well and busting out his sort of patented chest back to the goalkeeper that we've seen a lot, making impossible blocks, and playing these kind of Hollywood passes, basically being a good defender. But he is not. Pace has never been his thing. And we know that when he gets bullied and he has to go and chase after someone who's burst through him, he's not very good. So yeah, if we had another quicker centre half, I don't think he'd be in the team if he wasn't club captain.
Well, we're going to get comments for that, aren't we? Surely. But firstly, I don't know if you can drop him, but I understand.
No, I don't think you can. I'm not suggesting we had, but like, if you were actually looking at it on the merits of how he's playing in this particular system, I'm not suggesting he gets dropped. I'm just suggesting that he is not. It's another. The question is, it comes back to that thing, which is, if you're a manager, do you come in with a particular system that you want to play, or do you look at the players that you have at your disposal and come up with a system which suits them best? Because I'm arguing at the moment that when it comes to defence, you look at the personnel that we've got, and the way that we're playing defensively does not suit the defenders that we have.
I think that's the nail on the head. Josh, do you think, is Hurzeler being stubborn or short-sighted by... He didn't even really adjust it in the second half. Chelsea adjusted in the second half. Is he being stubborn by playing like this? And is it the right or wrong move?
He's played a back three in his entire coaching career, and he hasn't played a back three once with us. So you've got to argue that he can't be that stubborn, and he is trying to play to the strengths that we have, right? Like that would be my argument there. Like immediately, like he knows the players he's got available to him, and he's immediately gone to a back two. And now Igor's been fit for ages, and he's still not moved to a back three when he's got a left-sided centre back, one super comfortable on the ball in Dunk in the middle, and Van Heck on the right. So I would argue him not being willing to adapt to his team, I think is not accurate, because we're watching it. Like every single game is playing a totally different formation to the one he played for a year and a half at St. Pauli. But I think he's definitely not. I don't know what is going on in his head, because when you're watching that game and watching the highline and seeing how poorly it's doing, I don't fathom how you can't make a change, or like don't want to make a change with that. Doesn't make any sense, and like we're going to get thumped a lot this year by the good teams if we continue to do it. So I guess I just don't understand. Like he's not a stupid individual, right? He's not dumb. Like he's got this far. Like he's been in the game for like years and years and years. He's obviously able to coach a team because they already all seem to quite like him. Like he's, you know what I mean? Like he's obviously got everything he should need on the face of it, but it just all seems so obvious, and yet he was making so many, like he just didn't seem willing to change. So my answer is I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know why he wasn't willing to change, because it was so obvious.
I mean, I say this as Spurs score a second goal against a 10-man United, but is this Ange with a seagull slapped on it? Like, is this a manager that has used a certain setup and certain tactical setup in leagues that are less dominant than the Premier League, and has bullied smaller teams that aren't able to exploit the weaknesses that those systems create, and it's now coming a little bit unstuck against more competent, rigid setups and teams that have pace and world-class players that can exploit your backline weaknesses? Like, are we going to have a Spursy-like season where we'll have the highs and we'll batter some random teams, and then we'll get absolutely smashed by others that just go, great, mate, we're just going to plop the ball over the back line for you and just through ball it, and you're going to be done for?
I mean, I don't know. I think there are similarities with what we saw with Postecoglou last season, right? Like that. I don't know if it's stubbornness or naivety, right? But like, it sort of like, he has only had 6 Premier League games, right? At the same time, and he's going to try and fit a square peg in a round hole and try and maybe ride this out or try and figure it out. It was very clear we wanted the centre back and we wanted to add to that back line, and we didn't. I don't know either, honestly. Like it might be, let's take the good with the bad, right? Let's just see how this goes. We'll beat 14 teams, but for the other 6, we'll get absolutely dismantled. Like who knows? So I guess we're all in this together, and we'll find out anyway. But yeah, I think that the general consensus is that you don't have the right players to play this way, irrespective of whether you've tweaked it to a 2 or a 3 at the back, right? Like the philosophy is still the same. It's still that high line and trying to catch them off. And with those smaller sides or maybe the lower sides in the table, is just, they didn't either have the ability, or we just caught them off. We were too smart with that line. And you saw an incredible amount of offsides with Forest, with Ipswich, with those teams where it actually worked all right. And you go, right, if they're going to be caught offside 8 to 10 times, then don't worry about it. The whole raising the flag after the thing is gone, so you still have to play 20 seconds of football and bust your ass to get back anyway for a clear offside, is by the by. So it's do you say that, and do you just accept defeat for the super competent teams in this league and go, right, this isn't going to work on them, but it's going to work for 75%, and that's where we want to be for our first season? Like, again, we're still figuring this out. So the one thing is that it's raising my blood pressure. I can tell you that for free, because like just watching that type of football, and just you can almost see it coming. You anticipate that, oh, we're going to get caught on the break 18 times today, and not really fun to watch for us. So we'll see. I mean, it's different, I'll tell you that. It's just, okay, well, what do we do about it? Do you stick or do you twist? Who do you bring in January? Do we do any January transfers at all? Because we know we're not fans of it, right? So like, what's the answer? We're starting to see tweaks with the Dinger coming in and Minte coming out. We're starting to see people shift around with the injuries coming in now. So maybe we'll strike lucky with one of those. I think we said in our preseason review as well, this, like, it may take some time for him to really nail this dynamic and nail this philosophy. But once he does, I think it's going to work really well. At the moment, I think he's still figuring it out.
I mean, I've just been, while you've been talking, because I agree with everything you're saying, I've just been taking a look at the average player position maps on SofaScore. And if you guys go, and I'll send you a link actually, just to take a look at it. But this is the average player position, and I'll put these on Twitter as well, so you guys can see it who are listening. If you go on to SofaScore and look at the average player positions between the Brighton game against Everton, first game of the season, away, remember, as well, and against 10 men for large swaths of it, and then you look at the Chelsea one. I've looked at the Manchester United and Ipswich as well. They're very similar to the Everton one. Look at the difference when you go to Chelsea. Our fullbacks are, their average position at Stamford Bridge is in the opposition half. Like, it is astonishing. Like, so when I look at it from that perspective, I then pivot and say this was actually a game-specific tactical decision, and a poor one at that, which then makes me wonder. But then at the same time, we got the 2 goals from the incredibly high press that forced
exactly
goals, right? So
yeah,
it's hard because like it giveth and taketh away. Because to me, you look at those others, and you're more than welcome to go and take a look at the others, but they all look much more similar to Everton's map than they do the other one. So to me, like, that's very, very weird to me that it would look that way. And do you know what? Let me see if I can do this.
While you're looking, by the way, not every week are we going to face a side that has Nicholas Jackson, Madueke, Palmer, and a very informed Jadon Sancho, which is essentially the fastest, like, top 4 up the pitch working? That you can. You've screen shared something. This is going to be great for the podcast listeners.
So for the visual medium, I'm going to be able to do this for the YouTube viewers. I'm going to put this on Twitter for those who aren't. But if you look at your Everton map, this is your average player positions. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you can see Hinshelwood, Veltman, very structured, back 4, Weaver in the middle, happy days, right?
This is behind the center of the pitch. They're in our own half, like high up, but not still in our own half for those that are listening.
For Chelsea, here is the average player positions. So what we're looking at here is that 5 and 4, so your Duncan Webster are almost in the middle third of the pitch as their average player positions. And number 30 and number 24, left back, right back, are literally in the opposition half. They're already in the opposition half. It's just, that's not a sustainable formation at all. And then if you just take a look at Manchester United, right, that Veltman, Hinch is a little bit further forward, but look how much more defensively responsible that 4 looks.
That's at home.
And that's at home. You go to Ipswich, right? Ipswich as well. Look how more defensively responsible that also looks. Much more compact and together. And you've got, obviously, we'll talk a lot here shortly in the positives about Carlos Baleba. But like, look at this group. Like, it just looks more normal, what you would expect. I'm going to stop sharing now. But that was, like, to me, like, that stands out really big there for me. That to me looks like an actual tactical decision that took place. And I don't understand what that was about when we conceded 4 in 11 minutes, why that tactical decision wasn't changed.
Do we need to talk about the fullbacks as well, or not?
Well, we can talk about that perfectly now, because we can actually segue somehow back onto some form of track and talk about 25 minutes in, left-hand side of the pitch, Jadon Sancho gets the ball, receives the ball from a long pass. Don't worry, though. We've got cover from Ferdi Kadioglu, who's perfectly positioned. Carlos Baleba's tracking the runner. Jorginho Ruta is coming from up top to come back and support on defense. Ferdi Kadioglu does what I can only describe as a lunge, and he gets nowhere near either the man or the ball. Sancho then goes up the wing. Jorginho Ruta, I think, is still concussed. and basically just runs past Jadon Sancho. Sancho then cuts in. To be fair, I'm taking the piss out of the Brighton players. Sancho's looks magical on the ball at this. If you watch this back again, like it's really quality close control. And he plays the ball into Enzo Fernandez as a 1-2. And then Sancho gets buffeted between Ferdi Kadioglu and Carlos Baleba and goes down, and the penalty is awarded. What do we think about the penalty? We can't hear you, Robin, if you're talking about it. But while you're figuring out your audio, Craig, what's your thinking? Because we need to relate this to the Matoma penalty shout in the second half.
So with that, and hindsight, wonderful thing, it's soft, right? Like I think you've essentially sandwiched yourself between two players and fallen over. It is soft. I think if it happens to us, then yeah, you get the penalty as well, right? And you go, yeah, that's a penalty. I think it's very subjective. Sancho doesn't have the ball. He's trying to get to it. He's got sandwiched between two players also going for the ball. So I just think it's soft, and I think you either give those or you don't, and it then doesn't get overturned by VAR, regardless of what decision you make. I think if the ref goes with no penalty, then VAR doesn't turn over it. If it goes for a penalty, it doesn't turn over. So it's soft, but it would never be overturned by VAR is where I am.
Yeah, I just can't understand how you can give this as a penalty and not give the Matoma one, because then you've got the ability to sort of relate it back and say, well, I gave this one, so I should give this one. And he just waves it away. And of course, then regardless of what we think, and regardless of what we think of the rest of the refereeing in this game, which was an absolute shocking travesty, in my humble opinion, Cole Palmer steps up. Cole Palmer doesn't miss penalties, and he slots it home completely comfortably on officially the 28th minute. In the 30th minute, a free kick is awarded. Not that close to goal. As Robin hinted at earlier, the Chelsea players managed to get to move the ball forward a comfortable sort of, 10 yards, maybe a little bit more, just for shits and giggles. And Cole Palmer steps up and decides that he is going to pop the free kick into the postage stamp. Bart Verbruggen gets a hand on it. It's no good. Look, we can argue about the positioning of the free kick, but you can't argue with the free kick. That was just a very good goal. Robin, are you back with us?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the graphic. I put it in our WhatsApp group. It's like 12 yards from where the foul was, and it turns it from being a free kick you can have a shot from, and if it's taken from where it should have been, it's nowhere near. I mean, it's dreadful from a refereeing point of view. It's dreadful that you can let. It's not even like they've just managed to skip it forward a couple of yards. This is like 12 yards. That is a long way to get away with it. And apparently you've got, 5 or 6 officials here involved in a game, right? You've got the referee, both linesmen, the fourth official, a VAR, and a reserve referee sitting there. And none of them can spot that Chelsea have taken that forward 12 yards. I mean, I know I hate having to talk about referees. We've done so many, we've moaned about referees, but that is just like in the richest league in the world, you cannot have then it directly leads to a goal, which changes the entire course of the game. It's not acceptable. And I'd be saying the same. Like if we'd been the beneficiaries of it, I'd also be saying it's not acceptable because it changes the course of the game. It's not even, it's bonkers refereeing.
I was going to say there was some ironic jeers from the Brighton fans deep into the first half when I think we finally got awarded a free kick or a decision that went our way, because it just felt like it was complete one-way traffic for the first half of the first half. It was bizarre refereeing, but something we've now grown accustomed to at this point. What we haven't grown accustomed to is 3 minutes after that goal. So we had 3 minutes between the Palmer penalty and the Palmer free kick goal. And then 3 minutes after that, our good friend, who we never doubted in goal for Chelsea, Mr. Sanchez, decides he'll pass to Moises Caicedo. Nice little safe pass. Now we get to actually have some positive conversation. Carlos Baleba is everywhere. We didn't look at his heat map when you brought up the thing. I just imagine the entire pitch was red. He just then runs into the position where the ball should be at Moises Caicedo's feet, steals it off of him, slots it home. He is the most informed Brighton player at the moment. He looks like a fundamentally different player from last year. What are we thinking about his performance?
Go on, Craig. I saw you unmute yourself.
Oh, I beat you to it. Yeah, he's the guy at the moment, isn't he? Like, I think you've got the goal against Wolves, was it? You've got this goal here as well, where he's just good. I think he is everywhere. I think he's dynamic. He's big. Like, he's fast. Like, what do you think? Like, you saw him go up against Caicedo, who we know is a very good football player. And made it look relatively straightforward. I know people aren't too hot on Enzo Fernandez, either inside or outside of Chelsea at the moment, but he also made him look inadequate. And we're talking about a 20-year-old that has played maybe a season and a bit of senior football. Like, it's pretty insane. So you take his trajectory from the first game of the season to now, like 6 games in, and you think, how good can this guy get? He is everywhere. We've seen him be a little bit too, overzealous maybe in trying to get the ball back and trying to do everything, and maybe try and do too much, putting his foot in where maybe he doesn't need to. But that's nothing compared to what he brings to this team, right? You take that because he's able to break that pressure and carry the ball from what seemingly is a centre-back position into the final third, and skip past 5 people at the same time, and then also do everything else in the meantime. He's so fun to watch, and alongside being very important for this football team. Sorry, Josh.
I think he's got a higher ceiling than Caicedo does.
He does. I think he'll go for the same amount at some point.
No bias in that statement whatsoever. But
No, I just think he can do. I think he can do a lot of what Caicedo could do, but I think he's more well-rounded. I just think he's got more in his locker overall. I didn't see it last year. I mean, we saw flashes of it. I just didn't see it becoming evident as quickly. But I think he's the next £1 million plus player in the squad.
£1 million. I hope he's sold for £1 million at least.
Yeah,
that'd be decent. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point for me, I'm less thinking about Caicedo and more thinking about Bissouma. He reminds me a lot more of Bissouma than he does Caicedo. Primarily because of exactly what Robin said. He seems a lot more well-rounded. But he seems more well-rounded than Bis ever did, right? Like, even now, like, he's showing more on both sides of the ball than Bis ever did. And unfortunately, Bissouma has had a few injuries and some weird stuff. Like, he's not flourished in the way I really hoped he would at Spurs. I really wished him the best, and I wanted to see him become like the next big thing in the centre midfield, and he just never has like fit it yet. He's still young enough to do it, but I think Baleba is following his trajectory more than Caicedo's in style of play. And yeah, I can't remember which one of you said it. I think it was you, Adam, but like, good managers make football players better. If there's one player that's grown in the last couple of months under Hurzeler, it's Baleba. Like, he just looks unbelievable. And a goal and assist, both goals he was involved in, pivotal in the cup game so far when he came in before he was even playing in the starting 11 in the league. Looked like the only reason, he looked unbelievable against Forest. Looked worse team when he went off. Look a worse team whenever he's subbed off in any game, frankly. And yeah, he just looks excellent.
Stephen's mentioned this in the YouTube comments, but it's the difference in his confidence this year. And you can't imagine it's some tactical masterclass from Hurzeler. It's not like he's gone play in the middle and run around. But clearly, De Zerbi didn't have that confidence in him. And we saw that last year, whereas Craig hinted at, you had this ragged edge of a player, right? A player that was trying to go above and beyond to win the ball back, getting yellow cards, putting a foot in because he almost wanted to sort of like prove to daddy he was good enough. And instead, this year, he's got a manager who's said, you're playing, go and do your thing. And you've got this player that he's doing tricks in his own half. He's going round people. He's marching out with the ball. He's just playing with such confidence and belief in himself that that then brings on everything else, doesn't it? As the screen is flashing up after the goal with his name as goal scorer, he's then putting some other pile driver and we win the ball back again from Chelsea. And he's smashing another ball. Then Robert Sanchez has to dive to his left in quite smartly and save. He nearly gets 2 goals in the space of 15 seconds of game time. And then that would have been a 3-3 game. Slightly unfortunately, instead what happens is Chelsea had about another 6 attempts of just trying to lob the ball over our back line who were playing in their own half and nearly scoring. And then Bart Verbruggen did some very unlike Bart Verbruggen behavior, didn't he? And this goes back, I think, to what you've been talking about and what we've been saying when it comes to playing this setup of football. He's playing 4 at the back. Your 2 central defenders really need to have an understanding of one another and positioning along with the keeper. And we don't have that yet because there's been too much inconsistency. There's chopping and changing. You've got Adam Webster playing in. Verbruggen tries to pass the ball out to someone. It basically goes in between Adam Webster and Lewis Dunk. And it's shocking. But Enzo, I think it's Jadon Sancho actually picks it up. Enzo Fernandez picks it up, gives it to Jadon Sancho. And Jadon Sancho, again, with a lovely pass through to Cole Palmer. And you could argue here as well, Verbruggen has to save that shot to his near post. But a really good finish. And another goal gifted to Chelsea. And it's a 6-goal thriller at half-time, 4-2. And I think at that point, you kind of admit that that's going to be a long second half for us to figure out. But another defensive screw up from Bart Verbruggen this time instead of Adam Webster. Thoughts on this goal?
Yeah, he's done it a few times, hasn't he? There was a couple of games last year where he passed the ball straight to either no one or direct to an attacker. I mean, I think we talked about the time. It's going to come, it's part of if you're going to have a goalkeeper who is essentially a sweeper and you want them to be very comfortable with the ball at their feet, then it's going to happen from time to time. It's just irritating it happened in a game where we'd already gifted them a goal. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to stop them doing it. I think it's just, I think we even said at the time last year, it's going to happen probably 2 or 3 times a season.
Yeah, and Josh, you threw out those stats earlier about mistakes leading to goals. So we've had a 6 goals in this half. The first goal is a keeper error from Sanchez for us. The second goal, which is Palmer's goal, was Adam Webster's screw up. Then Palmer scores a penalty from essentially a defensive screw up when it comes to knocking the player over, even if you believe it wasn't a penalty. The next is a free kick. Then it's another Sanchez screw up. Then it's a Bart Verbruggen screw up. If there's more competence in this game, it could have just been 0-0 at half time. But it's just comedy.
Yeah, let's say, and if the referee can give free kicks in the correct place, right? Like it is 0-0. It is 0-0 at half time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like the free kick shouldn't have been where it was either. So like, like, that's the one that stands out as like not a mess up, but like it was a mess up because it should never have been there. So
yeah, it's 0-0.
Fine margins between 0 goals and 6. Some more insights coming from Together BHA next week, probably. Half time. It's weird. The second half, it was a completely different game, wasn't it? And frankly, after a thrilling first half, you'd imagine a lot of people then tuned into this game thinking, "Oh my, there's going to be 10 plus goals," and nothing happened. What kind of call? I mean, obviously defensively, it was very different in terms of Chelsea decided, look, we've got 4 goals here. We've got a comfortable lead. We're just going to play a little bit less aggressively here. We're going to sit back a little bit more. We had to make some changes whereby I think Ayari came on for Weaver, Igor came on for Webster around the 57th minute mark. And we basically just tried to break down a team that was sitting a little bit more behind the ball. Should we talk about Mats Weaver quickly, though? Because he's been an interesting signing so far, hasn't he? And I would say the first 10 to 15 minutes of this game, maybe a little bit more, he was appalling. And then he looked very competent for the rest of the game. He seems to start off quite nervously in games, doesn't he? He seems to linger on the ball, doesn't quite get his timings right. loses possession, is out of position, and then suddenly a switch goes off in his head, and he suddenly looks like a fantastic player. What's the thinking about Matt Sweefer at the moment? What have you thought of him so far?
I like the cut of his jib. I like what he potentially brings, right? And I think there are bits of magic in there as well. Like you saw it in, was it the Everton game? Like it's just very, very neat passing and being able to get out of a very pressurized situation is exactly what Hurzeler wants. I think he's just been hindered by this injury and coming back. I still don't think he's in full flow. So I'm still looking forward to what he brings. Again, 6 games in the Premier League, a couple of cup games, well, not even 6 because he was injured. So like still trying to get up to speed there. I'm very excited with him and Baleba in the same team, especially when they're both at full pelt. I think that's something that's going to be quite hard to stop because I think he'll be important to this team. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I concur on everything you said. I'm just sad he's not played much.
Yeah, he needs to work on his ball retention because he's given the ball away an awful lot in his first few appearances. But like Craig says, he's rusty. He's coming off the back of one injury already. I know he arrived with an injury, right? I think he missed out on the Holland squad for the Euros because he'd finished the season with an injury. Whether it's a different injury he's had or whether it's just a continuation of the same one, he's clearly rusty. He's going to be, like I said, he's going to be that player who's really crucial to break things up. But you think right now, I mean, I still think it's Ayari we looked better with Ayari on, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, a few weaved passes from him. But yeah, Ayari does look very, very good and competent. But again, it was a different game in the second half. I don't think Ayari would have looked anywhere near as comfortable if he played the first half under the same conditions. The second half was a little bit weird, just in the sense that you'd have expected us to do a lot more with the ball, but it ended up, from an expected goal standpoint, Chelsea had 2 in the second half. We didn't even have 0.3 expected goals in the second half after needing to come back from basically 2 goals down. Again, being caught out with a set of fairly high line, even though Chelsea were playing deeper. And I'm sure everyone's seen the highlights of this pass that happened. But Chelsea had some possession of the ball. They were playing it around a little bit. And there's a first-time pass from Cole Palmer. If you haven't watched this or you didn't see it live, it's just stunning. And you're Brighton fans, but watch this even just if you're an England fan, amazing. Go back and watch this pass on 48 minutes, whereby it's just a first-time cold pass with his left foot that goes over our defensive line perfectly. And honestly, if Nicholas Jackson wasn't a proper donkey, it's 5-2. It was a superb ball. Adam Webster, to his credit, as we mentioned earlier, does a very, very good job of tracking back and getting the ball off the line to prevent that goal from going in after it goes past Bart Verbruggen. But frustration in the second half. We did see Ferdi Kadioglu come off at one point. I think it was 71 minutes, and Ciso came on, Ruta came off, and Minter came on for him. Thoughts on Ferdi Kadioglu's performance, and then we can talk a little bit about Minter. Minter looked good, I think, coming into the game, poised in the position it was. He was able to try and break apart that defense a little bit more, and he was just a different flavor of attack. What did we think of Ferdi Kadioglu's performance? Was this his first start?
Yeah, it was. I thought he was okay. I think he got skimmed for pace against Sancho, who we know is quick, has sort of revitalized or found his place, right? Like I think I thought, a little bit slow, but I think he did okay. But I can't say any more than that. We lost 4-2 and we got outdone multiple times on the break and bits and pieces. I did bring up the fullbacks and stuff earlier. And maybe this was a game-related tactic, but you've got 2 out-and-out attacking fullbacks there in Estupiñán and Kadioglu, which is something that we haven't done so far this season, right? Like you've always had Veltman at that right back, or you've put Hinshelwood at the left back, or someone in that line that's a bit more defensive. Yesterday was out and out, right? Like the Kadioglu could play right mid. Estupiñán, we know what he can do offensively. if that was a game tactic that we push up those fullbacks a little bit more, then it didn't work, right? And we know that that's quite evident. But from the lineup choice, and I think I missed this right at the start, is having Estepinian and Kadioglu start for the first time, right? That's a lot more attacking in the fullback sense of things. Does that leave your centre backs up open to even more scrutiny? Maybe, but yeah, it was an okay game for Kadioglu. Not exactly the best game to come and make your first start, but you know, we'll see better from him. And I think attacking wise against the lower table teams, I think he's going to be very good. But again, we're talking about defensive high lines against really competent teams and really fast teams. He didn't have the best day, but that's okay. Nobody did.
Robin, do you think that to Craig's point, playing the more attacking minded fullbacks, he kind of let that go because he was basically playing three pretty defensive minded central midfielders with Hinchelwood, Weaver and Baleba, which, as you say, normally we might have seen an Iari in there. If he's fit, we'd see a Matt O'Reilly who's more attacking minded. But these are three guys that primarily want to defend. And it didn't function like that. And we got your audio is all busted up again. But
I was going to say, in his St. Pauli days, you could see that the fullbacks, the width and the height of the fullbacks was absolutely crucial to everything. So it's not a great surprise, like to Josh's point earlier about how it was clearly tactical to have them that high up the pitch and that wide. The bits and pieces that I saw of St. Pauli, albeit after he'd been appointed with us, the thing that stuck out was that was the outlet. So I think he's clearly come in and gone, he's applying the same thing. And the question is whether or not it's something that, was it ever going to work against Chelsea? So it's a question of, it's back to what we said before, is it going to be something we see adapted, or is he going to continue with it until everyone's fully used to it? Because I mean, you look at who we've got next, right? You got Spurs next.
It is horrendous.
Well, Spurs, I mean, let's look at the next two, right? Particularly, you've got Spurs next, and then after the international break, you've got Newcastle away as the first one back after that.
Mm-hmm.
Those two teams, if you look at their respective front threes that they've got, again, it's two more teams who their big attacking strength is their pace in behind. So I think the next two games are going to be really interesting to see, is he going to do the same thing against them? Because if the worst happens, right, and we get thrashed in both of those games, then you're suddenly going in, you know, going, what is happening? I don't know. It'd be really interesting to see what he does in those games, because particularly, you know, Newcastle are looking really good at home. You've got Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes and Isak, if he's fit, who absolutely thrive off space in behind. And then next week, you've got Spurs with Johnson, Kulusevski, Son, if he's fit. Again, the same thing. So I don't know exactly what they're hoping that tactic to achieve against teams that are that good on the break. Because basically what you've got to do is, when you have the ball and when we're in the attacking ascendancy, we've got to score. Basically, because we know that we're going to concede the number of chances that we do on the break, and we know that this Brighton team over the past year or so, we've not been that clinical in front of goal. So I think Hurzeler's style revolves. I mean, it revolves around, you really have to be clinical with the chances that you get, because you're going to concede a ton of chances on the break. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty pivotal period for how he's going to be these next couple of games, which is he going to stick to his guns and his principles of, this is how I want my team to play, even in the face of, on paper, two more teams who it plays into their hands, or is he going to be more pragmatic? I think it's going to be super interesting to see what he does.
Josh, it's got a chance of getting fairly ugly, doesn't it? With these games coming up. And by the way, we haven't really talked in depth about the second half of the Chelsea game. Chelsea could have won that game 6-7-2. Like, we forgave the ball away. Palmer should have scored. Cucurella's header from the corner got a flag for offside. You know, they have plenty of other chances. And then, as Robin said, you go into a game against Spurs, Newcastle away. Yeah, you've got Wolves, but you've also got Liverpool away and Man City at home. Like, that's a lot.
And Liverpool at home as well in the cup, of course.
And the cup, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Spurs especially is the big litmus test, right? Like that, like you talk Ange ball, like it literally is Ange ball. So, like let's see like what that team operates like against Spurs. We essentially really did play like incredibly Spursy on Saturday, right? So, like when we play Spurs themselves, like if we elect to do that again, we are playing the exact same tactics as the team we're playing against, who have a better personnel all across the pitch for the most part. So that would be a level of like tactical naivety where I would become incredibly worried about what thought process is going on in Hurzeler's head. Like right now, I'm concerned. If he does that, I'm worried. I'm like moving it up a notch from like concerned of what I'm seeing to like fully worried about what I'm seeing or like what is going on in people's heads, because that would
I'm already one notch up, right? I'm already worried. I'm one notch up from you right now.
You're a Hurzeler doubter.
100%. Absolutely. I'm not sure it's going to work.
It's not been many games. Look, people are going to come at this and they're going to have their polarizing opinions, because the glass half full thought here is that before you played a very informed Chelsea side, your 31-year-old manager came in and was unbeaten so far this season, right? I know. There's a lot of asterisks next to all that, and then yeah, your glass half empty approach can be, well, we haven't won a Premier League game now since, what was the last
Man United.
Man United, right?
The
so
second game
it's been
of
a
the
month.
season, yeah.
It's been a month. Not one. We're not one. For the games that we have got points out of, red card for Forest, red card for Arsenal. I guess you even talk about the Crawley game, and we've not been able to beat Ipswich and Forest at home. And we've basically just had one of our easiest runs in the league, and we faced probably the worst side in the league as well on the first game of the season. It's anyone's guess, isn't it, really? But my opinion, at least, is that I'm nervous, but we haven't been able to see. He's not been able to play his team fully yet. We've never had a time where the first 11 has been fit. We don't even know if he wants to play these tactics, but he is. And the players certainly don't seem to have necessarily got used to how he wants to operate. And again, the only thing that you can really accurately relate this to is Spurs, and Spurs fans have their same doubts around Ange, don't they? There's a lot of people that are saying we want to get rid of Postecoglou, and you've got another set of fans that are very passionate about him being successful. It's just too early to tell for me. Craig, Josh, do you have where do you stand on the Hurzeler meter?
I'm the same as you. I think we've still got time, and I always sort of refer back to before even a ball was kicked, right? We said, right, we need to afford some sort of time here because the philosophy is changing. He's still very new. He's very inexperienced. And I think I said in our chat yesterday, I feel like very favorable couple of results at the start of the season has just maybe falsified our stance as to what we can expect from this season. Because, you win your first couple of games, you go unbeaten for your first 5. You go, oh, hang on, we're onto something special immediately here. He did it with St. Pauli, he won 10 in a row when he first started. It's like, okay, this is a different kettle of fish. This is different. He needs to figure this out. Your Chelseas and your Man Uniteds and your Cities and your Arsenals are spending literal billions, to compete for this, right? So I think he needs time, and I think he deserves time. I don't think Tony Bloom or Paul Barber would have made this decision without the abundance of time that he might need. But like we said, once he gets it, once it clicks, I think we're good. But it's like that sussing out period at the moment of trying to figure out who we are, who we aren't, who's in, who's out. And once we hit that, I think we'll be fine. So there's no real danger of us being relegated. I don't think anyone can say that. I think we're still far and away better than 3 teams in this league. But it's like finding out who we are and where we're meant to be, especially after the amount of money and the favorable start that we've had. I have, no qualms over people that have heightened expectations, but this is a 31-year-old manager that has never managed in a top 6 league before. So maybe this is tempering our expectations a little. Sorry, Josh, go on.
No. Like I said, I'm concerned, not worried. I think I would up the notch to worried in these next 5 or 6 games where we play all of the top teams, with the exception of Wolves, who are shocking, right? And I think if we come out of this showing an incredible sense of naivety, then I would be really worried. Like, I expect him to adjust these tactics and become a more responsible manager for the next 6 football games, right? Like, that's what I expect to see. If I don't see it and I see another 6 games of Brighton away at Roma, worried, very worried, because then that is walking into like Sami Hyypiä territory for me.
Yeah, that's why I said like the next, it's super interesting. Like my sort of slightly sort of joking to an extent negativity is it's super. That's why I said it's super interesting to see what he does in this next passage of games in terms of how he approaches it. Because I'm with you, Josh. If he blindly goes, nah, this I'm going to play risk reward, we're going to go for it. We've seen how that goes. And if he does that for the next 6 games, then I think we've got big problems.
For what it's worth, I don't think he will. I think he will.
I don't think he will either, but
I think we'll see games a lot more like Everton than we did against Chelsea. For what it's worth, I that's why I'm only a concern, like, because I actually think it's not going to go I think he's not an idiot, right? I just don't think he's an idiot, so we wouldn't keep doing it.
But do you think he sees some of these as free hits though, where he can experiment or just change things up or try and catch them off guard? Like, because that's also a possibility, right? Like, I wouldn't call that naivety. I would call that a free hit or a calculated expectation that you're not going to go and win this game. So let's just try and catch them off guard. Like, there's a bunch of, like you said, that's why it's so interesting to see what happens these next couple of games, because you could go, right, this isn't working, let's just try and get a result here. But then at the same time, that doesn't strike me as the manager that he is. So you could go either way, right? You could go, right, let's try something more conservative, or let's just try and catch them off guard and keep doing what we're doing, because they're not going to expect that. It's just a game of cat and mouse at the end, isn't it?
I feel fan bases tend to, there's always good meaning behind saying, oh, we're not going to judge the manager, give him a mulligan for the first year because lot to expect, whatever. And then like football games happen, and people change their minds fairly quickly, because I think it's very reasonable to say this guy's you got to give him time to figure it out. How many times have we heard that before, though, for everyone around the league? For me, if you're watching a game like yesterday, what I don't want to see is an embarrassment result. And if you get a couple of those embarrassment results is where it all goes wrong. If you get beaten by Spurs and Liverpool and Newcastle and Man City, I don't think you'd really be judged. Like, maybe if you pick up a couple of points in there, great. If you get a win, amazing. Now, if you're getting beaten 7-3 by Man City, you're having different conversations. And I think that's what we're all getting at. These tactics risk the blowout embarrassments. And that's when you start to lose fans, because you go, I'll take safe, reliable football where we win 2-1 versus maybe sometimes we win 6-1 and sometimes we lose 8-3. Speaking of, I know we don't normally do this, but what score predictions for the Spurs game? What do we actually think?
9-9.
I was going to say, before you do that, I think the counter to it as well is also, you can, as fans, you can you get closer to accepting being thrashed by Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, if you're doing the business against the Ipswich and Forest of the world.
Yeah.
If you're doing neither of those things, then you've got a problem. I think this is a wildly different conversation. If we come off the back of having comfortably beaten Ipswich and comfortably beaten Forest, then I think it's a wildly different conversation. At the moment, we're kind of falling in that uncomfortable space where we're kind of not seeing I know to the point earlier to go, right, these tactics might well work against the lesser teams, and then we have to kind of accept that we're going to get thrashed by the bigger teams. Fair enough. If it's working against 14 of the 20 teams, brilliant, we'll be fine. The fact is that in another universe, I think Everton games, they were dreadful. That was always going to be a win. But in another universe, you can make a case for having lost the rest of them. Man United, we are a Xerxes moment of idiocy away from probably losing that, or certainly not winning that game. In the Ipswich game, we're a post away from Liam Delap scoring a wonder goal. And the Forest game could have gone either way. So we're not comfortably, and I accept it's early days, but at the moment we are not comfortably putting away the so-called lesser teams either, which then gives you even less leeway to get thrashed by the bigger teams.
I think that's what gives Postecoglou the divide, right? Like if you look at Tottenham's games this year, like they put 4 past Everton, they like beat the absolute crap out of them, right? They beat Brentford comfortably at home. They went down to 10 men early against Qarabağ and still beat them 3-0, right? They've gone away to Old Trafford and dispatched them comfortably 3-0. Like that's how Spurs have made Europe this year, and that's how that split is there. There's some fans that want them to challenge top 4 and go for even like a title run because they're watching Arsenal do the same thing, right? Like, but they're a team that are beating those top sides. They're losing to Newcastle away. They're losing to Arsenal, right? They're being held at home to Leicester, first game of the season, but that's a weird one, right? That's first game of the season is always a bit odd. But I think that's where they get away with it. Like Spurs and Ange do get away with that because they are winning all of those, majority of those games against the lesser teams. They're winning them. So to me, like, I think that's where the difference is. And I agree with you, Adam. Like we go in and we lose 3-1 to Spurs and 4-1 to Liverpool and then lose 8-0 to Man City. Like the sentiment is that's not free hit. I don't care how much of a free hit Man City weighs. You don't lose 8-0. Especially if he then just refuses to adapt. That would be like crazy to me. But I don't think it will happen. Like I really don't. I can't picture like Moyes at United levels of ineptitude. Like I can't even imagine he would have been so stupid.
Well, but is it more Germans beginning with H? Is it more like Hasenhüttl kind of set up where you get situations where they look like a really good side and looks like a competent manager, and then you get pummeled? Different style of football, obviously, completely different style of football. But the only thing that you do have, and obviously, I think there's Stephen's mentioned that, but by Christmas is the time to judge him. Well, you're going to see both sides of the coin here, because we get this run of games where we're facing basically all of the sides above us over the course of the next month and a bit. We get a game at home against Wolves there. This is the same Wolves who we obviously beat in the cup, but did look a bit dangerous when we took our foot off the pedal. But they have a minus 10 goal difference and 1 point in the Premier League. That's to Robin's point. If you do not get 3 points at home to Wolves on the 26th of October, you get the blessing from this podcast to panic. After you've got away from that Man City game, from the 23rd of November onwards, you're facing Bournemouth, below us in the table. Southampton, below us in the table. Fulham, obviously above. Leicester, below us in the table. Palace, below us in the table. West Ham, below us in the table. Brentford on Boxing Day, below us in the table. And you round out with Villa, tricky game on the 29th of December. You got to win a bunch of those ones if you lose the big ones, to your point. And so by the time we get to the end of December and we're in the January transfer window, we'll have a very good impression as to what Hurzeler is and how
we're already seeing the effects of the Champions League with Aston Villa, right? Like today. Like, so Aston Villa on the 29th of December are a very different Aston Villa to last year, I suspect, which makes them infinitely more winnable, just because that's who they're going to be this year. They're going to hit the Champions League wall very hard because they've already done it today.
We normally do man of the match on these things. It's Carlos Baleba, so that's done. Unless anyone else has got some kind of novel thought that occurred. Outside of that, we've got this Spurs game coming up next Sunday. So that is going to intrude on podcast timing, isn't it, for us? So we'll probably have to modify our schedule a little bit, but we will be back at some point, if it's the Sunday or the Monday, to talk about the Spurs game. And then we do have a little bit of a break, right? A 2-week break for internationals again, which is what we've all been really hoping for. Everyone wants to see some more sort of unimportant England games. And then we go to Newcastle. Thoughts? Any other thoughts before we go that aren't as well-ending as what we've been talking about?
Yeah, worth noting also, obviously Spurs have played today and not yesterday, so we've had an extra day's rest there. And they also travel to Ferencváros this midweek. Horrible
Portugal?
place. Hungary.
Hungary.
So they have to go over to Europe on a away day on a Wednesday, I believe. So not only have they had a less day rest now, they then have to play. They've played Manchester in Manchester. They have to come home, grab a flight, go out to Hungary, play Ferencváros, and then come back and play us. So there are reasons to be cheerful on paper. We'll see how that turns out. And then, of course, they are coming to us too, right? Like, we're not going up to their stadium, right? Like, we're at home. So again, they have to travel. They have to do the ritual of going, coming down, getting sorted out. Like, how much time do they have to prepare for us? Yeah, we'll see.
So we didn't do the score projections, seriously. What are we thinking?
I might go for another 4-2 for Spurs, unfortunately.
I was going to say, I was at who?
2-1 Spurs.
3-1 Spurs.
Christ. Well, I mean, I may as well just go for bloody Brighton podcast. I'll say we win it 3-2.
Well, you'll be sitting there next week all smug anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's standard. Yeah, but no, this weekend was a very humbling experience, that Chelsea game. I'm hoping this Spurs one is very, very different, because they've got their easy game out of the way with Man United. 10 men Man United's got to be realistically the easiest game in the league, isn't it? So hopefully we put up a bit more of a performance. We still won't have João Pedro. The understanding is Van Hecke should be okay, is at least our hope. So it'll be interesting to see what the lineup ends up being against Spurs, but it's going to be this.
All 20 players will be standing on the halfway line anyway. It's going to be
fun. It makes no difference. There's going to be. I wonder if the keepers just everyone just meets in the middle, and it's like, I don't know if anyone's played the new EAFC or FIFA or whatever, the new Rush game mode where it's like 5-on-5. It's going to be that where just everyone is just chaotically running about and no one's defending, and it's going to end with a stupid scoreline. The score more than you, Derby. Anyway,
so it's obviously going to end 0-0 now, isn't it? After
it's going to be 0-0. Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
0 XG across all chances, like nothing.
Yeah, indeed. I tell you what, the only thing I will say is I really hope, if it's going to be a monumentally high goal scoring game, bring Evan Ferguson on and get that man his goal, because I think it was October last year when he last scored, and we are in October. You're probably listening to us and it's October. It's been a year since Evan Ferguson has scored.
Was that Forest away, wasn't it?
I don't remember that
last
far
goal.
back.
Yeah,
I believe you.
Tidy finish.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
That was the game. I think then Dunk got sent off, didn't he? And we had to hold on for about 20 minutes.
Oh,
anyway,
great game though.
Yeah. But yeah, a year is a very long time for a striker to be.
I'd say so. More insights from Together BHA like that one next week. We appreciate it. Thank you all for listening.
Cheers all.